Hey everybody, Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell, and welcome to the latest episode here on my YouTube channel. And today we're doing something fun, something a little different. I'm actually diving in and doing a top 5 video, which I've never done before, but we're actually not going to be talking about anything upcoming. Instead, this video is all about my top 5 favorite MMORPG soundtracks, and they might not be games that you would consider to be up there in a top 5. That being said, I have a somewhat eclectic taste in music, and I wanted to put this out there for my followers as well as people out there who might appreciate good music in MMORPGs beyond what most people put in their top 5 because it's like the most famous games. So, without further ado, we're going to dive in. But before we get to that point, don't forget this is where we do the whole hey, if you're new here and you don't know who I am and you stumbled across this video and you get to the end of this and you liked what you saw or heard, like the video, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you never miss any future content, and of course, don't forget you can join us in Discord, links are down below. There's a whole bunch of other playlists here on YouTube for you to check out with all the different things that I do. And if you want to go crazy and dive into what I'm working on with my wife and my brother in terms of game development with The Weave in the Void, you can head on over to our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Wandering Hermits, and you can pick up a subscription for as little as $3 a month to support what we do here, buy me a cup of coffee, as well as pre-order all the different things that we're working on over there. Until then, let's dive in. So the number one game on my list is a dead game. It's a game that no longer exists anymore in a playable state other than via an emulator. And while I don't traditionally promote emulators because I'm a firm believer in intellectual property and the value of that intellectual property going to the creator of that intellectual property, this is the case of a game that has been dead for quite a while, and there appears to be no interest from the IP holder to do anything with it. So in this case, I would say if you do want to check this game out, you can. It's in a rough state, but it is available in an emulator, and that game is Vanguard Saga of Heroes. Hands down, without a shadow of a doubt, this game had the best soundtrack that I've ever heard in an MMORPG. It was mostly put together by the composer Todd Maston, who also did a lot of work on things like Age of Empires. But for me, the work on the Vanguard soundtrack just that's what blew this game out of the water. I loved Vanguard for a lot of different reasons, but this was the first game where I went into it and went, oh my god, the music is so good that I'm actually enjoying the music as much as the content of the game. And that's a rarity considering most games I'm primarily focused on the content of the game and pursuing that content and leveling up my character. So this was the game that first brought, a good soundtrack to my ears, and it was also the first game that then made me start paying attention as I dove into future games. I have since continued to always keep an ear out and sort of see whether or not I think the soundtrack is something that I like enough to listen to as I'm playing, or if it's something where I'm just going to turn the sound off and listen to music while I play. And the moment that I turn off the game's music to listen to like Tom Petty or something, that's when I know the soundtrack sucks. Because if you're not listening to the in-game music, then they haven't done a good enough job. Because the content of the game should include music, and it should be as important as quests and raids and leveling up and everything else. So for me, Vanguard Saga of Heroes, that is my favorite game. Soundtrack at the top of my list. Next up for me is The Lord of the Rings Online, which is another game where I feel like the music is as good as the content of the game. Now, it has, over the years, we've seen, because it's been out for a long time, the music and the main composers have changed a little bit here and there, but in the original version of this game, Chance Thomas was the composer who worked on the Lord of the Rings Online. He also did Quest for Glory 5, Dragonfire, which that's a game that's coming up in my point and click classic series because it's part of the Quest for Glory series. So I like Chance beyond just his Lord of the Rings music. Also, Stephen D. Gregorio, I think, is another guy who worked on the Lord of the Rings soundtrack at some point in time. I'm not intimately familiar with the composers on this. I'm just doing very, quick Google search on this stuff. But for me, the most important thing is the music. And I think the Lord of the Rings online music is some of the best in the industry. It's a second for me, obviously, to the Vanguard soundtrack, but it's so good, especially the tavern music in Lord of the Rings Online. There's some really cool tavern tunes, but for me, it's the music in the different areas, like when you get to Rivendell, or when you get to Bree, or when you're out in the Lone Lands, or exploring the Troll Shaws. Just the music is always on point. It harkens back to the films, and so, just as good as the films soundtracks were, the Lord of the Rings online game soundtrack is just phenomenal. For me, it's really easy to get into a game when the music is good, as I mentioned with Vanguard, and Lord of the Rings Online is that game for me where anytime I log into it, I always have the sound going. Even the combat music is good in Lord of the Rings Online. And this is funny for me because most games, I'd say 99% of games I play, I turn off the combat music if it has combat music. And if I'm allowed to turn it off, I turn it off. EverQuest 1, EverQuest 2, that combat music is off. I can't stand it. It's just repetitive and just horrible. But the combat music in Lord of the Rings Online is so good that I keep it on, which is a good sign. Next up on my list is Elder Scrolls Online. Now, this one actually has a little bit more of a muddled history with composers. One of my favorite game music composers of all time worked on the main title, which was Jeremy Soule. I always pronounce it Soule. It might be Soul. But primarily, Elder Scrolls Online is composed by Brad Derrick and Rick Schaefer. I think that Elder Scrolls Online, and it's funny because the main theme is something that you kind of hear resonating throughout the Elder Scrolls games as an entity. But the Elder Scrolls Online, honestly, it's hard for me. These top three could all be lumped together to some degree, because I feel that the Vanguard soundtrack, the Lord of the Rings Online soundtrack, and the Elder Scrolls Online soundtrack are all equally good. But I did have to pick favorites, and it's really difficult to do for me. But I ended up putting Elder Scrolls Online in third place only because I haven't played Elder Scrolls Online as much as I've played Lord of the Rings Online, for example, and I don't like Elder Scrolls Online as much as or I don't have the same passion for it as I did for Vanguard Saga of Heroes. Elder Scrolls Online is a great game, and I think that along with having probably the best voice acting of any MMORPG out there, the music in Elder Scrolls Online is phenomenal. They've done a very good job, and of course, they're not afraid to throw money at the composing of music because they understand just how important music is to the atmosphere of the game, and they very much do treat the music of their game as in its own content entity. So kudos to them for doing that. I don't really, because I'm not intimately familiar with Elder Scrolls Online because I haven't played thousands of hours like I have with Elder Scrolls Online. I still, as I come back every single time to ESO, their main themes anytime you go into a city, or the main themes for every zone, the main themes for dungeons, are so good. Like, it's just one of those games where the music is so subtle that you almost don't realize it's there, and then the next thing you know, you find yourself in the middle of a combat scenario, and things have just sort of naturally progressed to that point where you're just sitting there going, I really feel like I'm on an adventure. And that's something I think Elder Scrolls Online does really well, better than probably any other MMORPG out there, which is the music actually carries that adventure and puts you into that adventurous spirit, which is amazing. So this is the third one on my list is the Elder Scrolls Online. Next up on my list is Guild Wars. Not Guild Wars 2, but the original Guild Wars. And one of my favorite game composers, who I mentioned earlier, Jeremy Soule, was the composer for Guild Wars 1. He also did, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that he did like the Icewind Dale soundtracks, which I love. I could be wrong on that. I'm double clicking. Yeah, it says he's worked on Elder Scrolls, Guild Wars, Icewind Dale, and the Harry Potter series, which is amazing. Icewind Dale is up there in like my favorite soundtrack of like any game of any period of all time. But we're talking MMORPGs today. Um, Guild Wars 1 was a game that when it came out, I was heavy into other games, so I didn't get into it at the time. It was later after it launched, I want to say the third or fourth expansion was when I really got into Guild Wars and was playing it a lot. Now, there have been some other people who have worked on the music for Guild Wars over the years, such as McLean Dimer, but Jeremy Sowell was the principal who worked on the original soundtrack for that first launch game. It was so good. Like, I remember running around like in Absalon and other places, and just the main theme, all of the cutscene musics, all of the area music effects, like just it was so good. And it's one of those games where Guild Wars 1 was never as big as some other games, but it was definitely influential, and it helped them establish um, their company enough that they made Guild Wars 2. Now, I think Guild Wars 2 failed in a lot of ways. I never liked Guild Wars 2 like I did the first one, and I never played it like I did the first one. I've tried 3 different times to get into Guild Wars 2, and I've never been able to get into it. But I would have to hesitate to say that I would be happy to go do another playthrough of Guild Wars 1. But like that would be something where I wouldn't, I could see myself doing another playthrough of Guild Wars 1, like going back with friends and like doing that game all over again and experiencing that world, because it's been probably a decade since I've played it. But that music has always stood out to me as some of the best in any MMORPG I've ever played. Definitely up there on my list here in my top 5. Finally on my list is a game that I have not played intimately, but I think the music is still exceptionally well, and there's a bunch of people who have worked on it over the years, but World of Warcraft, which has been composed and arranged by Jason Hayes, Tracy W. Bush, Derek Duke, and Glenn Stafford. The most iconic song here is definitely the main theme song for World of Warcraft, but also the tavern music in this game. Some of the theme songs, like for Stormwind and other themes, like I have played Warcraft over the years. Just I haven't been a hardcore player of it, and I didn't play it at launch because I was too busy with EverQuest 2, which ironically, as much as I loved EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2, you'll notice that their soundtracks didn't make it onto this list, and that's because even though the music was iconic, there were certain compositions that were iconic, such as the opening theme for EverQuest, as an example. The rest of the soundtracks, in my mind, weren't that great. EverQuest 2 has some good stuff, but World of Warcraft beat EverQuest 2 for the simple fact that, for me, the music was more iconic, especially that tavern music, and the music for places like that one, Forest and Stormwind, and so on and so forth. World of Warcraft music is recognizable on a global stage. Like, it's not like, say, Guild Wars music that is only recognizable to people who have ever played Guild Wars. Everyone knows the World of Warcraft soundtrack, and rightfully so. It is really good. There's a lot of really good stuff here, and there's great music across the entirety of the game, especially that early launch game from 2004. I think that this is one of those soundtracks that definitely stands out as one of the best of all time. And yes, it still is one of the biggest MMORPGs out there, and it's done, despite the fact that it's done a lot of things wrong, it has done a lot of things right, including the music. In any case, everybody, that is the end of my top 5 favorite MMORPG soundtrack video. That's the end of it here. Yeah, we're into the end of the end. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are some other games that you think have a really good soundtrack? If enough of you put something down in the comments, I might make a follow-up video to this and go give those soundtracks a listen and see what I think about them. And of course, don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you get updates for all the future content, join our Discord, links are down below, and if you want to support the channel, you can always head over to the Patreon page where we are producing the Weave in the Void. It's patreon.com/Wandering Hermits. You can pick up a subscription for as little as $3 a month. Buy me a cup of coffee as a way to say thanks, and you get access to the chapters that we produce for the book a couple times a month, as well as general updates. And you can also pre-order our point-and-click game, as well as the tabletop adventures and source book that we're putting together, and find out more information about what I'm working on with my brother and my wife. Thanks so much for sticking it out with me today. I hope I will see everybody in the next video. Until then, stay safe and easy listening.